It began the way these things always do, not with trumpets, not with fire falling from the sky. It began with a whisper. The night was quiet in the New Mexico desert, the air still and dry around the great radio telescopes of the VLA. 27 massive dishes spread across the earth like giant ears, forever listening to the universe. Most nights the universe said nothing. Just static, just silence. But on one Tuesday in late November, the silence broke. A young astronomer named Dr. Evelyn Cross leaned over her monitor, expecting the same white noise she'd seen 1,000 times before. Instead, her screen flickered with a new pattern. The signal, it was faint, buried deep in the static, but it was structured, rhythmic, intentional. At first, Evelyn thought it might be interference, some satellite transmission bleeding through the data. But as the minutes ticked on, the pattern sharpened. A sequence of prime numbers, a repetition, and then variation. "Run it again," she whispered. Her colleague Amir tapped a command into the console. The signal replayed, its alien rhythm pulsing through the speakers like a coded heartbeat. This was no accident. Something was speaking. The team erupted in celebration. Calls were made, emails sent. Within hours, the discovery reached SETI headquarters, then NASA, then the Pentagon. For the first time in history, humanity had proof. We were not alone. Evelyn should have felt joy. She should have felt awe. But as she listened to the pulse, an unease grew in her chest. There was something in the rhythm, not just numbers, but urgency. Almost like a warning. By dawn, the first fragment of translation was complete. A single word appeared on Evelyn's screen. "Run." The word sat on the screen, glowing faintly in green text. "Run." The lab was silent. No one spoke. No one breathed. Then Amir laughed nervously, shaking his head. Could be a mistranslation. Data error, a coincidence. But Evelyn knew better. This wasn't an error. This was a message. Over the next 48 hours, the team worked without sleep, feeding the signal into supercomputers, translating the pulses into numbers, the numbers into symbols, the symbols into images, and slowly something took shape. A star system. Not ours, not even close. A cluster of suns on the far edge of the galaxy. Beside it, drawings, sketch-like images embedded within the signal itself. Spirals of machinery, towers rising higher than mountains, rings wrapped around entire planets, structures too vast for human comprehension. It was as though someone had tried to paint a picture using mathematics. But the pictures weren't beautiful. They were terrifying, because everywhere the symbols appeared, one phrase followed. "Run, run, run." By the 5th day, NASA convened an emergency panel. Military officials, scientists, world leaders, all staring at the same images, the same terrible message. "This isn't a greeting," one general said flatly. "It's a warning." But a warning about what? The night Evelyn sat alone in the lab. The lights dim, the hum of the servers in her ears. She stared at the signal still pouring in, still repeating its dreadful rhythm, and then she saw it. Hidden in the noise, a new variation. Not numbers this time, timing. Pulses that stretched into long pauses, then rapid bursts. She realized with a sinking heart what it was. A countdown. And it was getting closer to 0. On the 12th day, the countdown reached its end. The last pulse came through the array at 3:42 a.m. Then silence. Evelyn sat frozen at her desk, staring at the dead feed. For nearly 2 weeks, the signal had been constant, like a heartbeat echoing from across the galaxy. Now it is gone, and that's when the skies changed. First, the auroras. The green and blue ribbons that usually danced in the polar skies suddenly flared across the entire world. But these weren't normal auroras. They burned red, rivers of crimson light twisting over deserts, jungles, cities. People stepped out of their homes in the middle of the night, staring upward in stunned silence. Then came the animals. Birds abandoned their nests, flying in endless circles until they dropped. Whales beached themselves by the hundreds. Dogs refused to go outside, trembling and whining at doors. The world was shifting. The planet itself seemed to know. And then on the 15th day, something appeared. At first, astronomers thought it was a comet, an object slipping into our solar system on a strange trajectory. But comets don't move like this. They don't stop. They don't change direction. The object settled into orbit above Earth. Not a ship. Not exactly. It looked like a fragment, a jagged shard of something broken, hundreds of miles long. Its surface glimmered faintly with a lattice of red lights, shifting like veins beneath black stone. More fragments followed, dozens of them, then hundreds. Piece by piece they began to assemble. High above Earth, a machine was being built, something so massive it blotted out the stars. Governments scrambled jets, satellites locked on, sending back images that shook every world leader to their core. It wasn't a fleet. It wasn't an armada. It was a construction. And for the first time, Evelyn understood the true meaning of the message. The signal wasn't just a warning. It was someone else's scream. The machine grew, day after day, fragment after fragment, until it stretched wider than the moon itself. Cities gathered on rooftops to watch it unfold like a black flower in the sky, each petal glimmering with veins of red light. Some called it the hand of God. Others called it judgment. But Evelyn knew better. It wasn't divine. It was mechanical. And it wasn't here for war. It was here to harvest. The first beams came without warning. Not fire, not explosions, light. Columns of white energy descending silently from orbit, touching down on cities and seas. Where they landed, things didn't burn. They dissolved. Skyscrapers unraveled into dust. Oceans drained upward in shimmering rivers. Forests, mountains, entire coastlines vanished as though they had never existed. Humanity tried to fight back. Fighter jets streaked into the sky, missiles launched, nuclear warheads detonated. None of it mattered. The beams ignored everything, dismantling matter itself, stripping the planet piece by piece. And then came the sound. Not through radios, not through speakers, inside every human mind. The same voice that had whispered through the signal now spoke, directly to billions of people at once. You were not meant to hear us. You were not meant to see this. The signal was not for you. People screamed in the streets. Some fell to their knees in prayer. Others clawed at their ears, desperate to silence the words that weren't really words at all, but thoughts forced into their brains. Evelyn clutched her journal, her hands shaking as she wrote. This wasn't contact. It wasn't discovery. It was an accident. We overheard a warning that wasn't ours. We were never supposed to know. She looked up at the sky, at the vast machine blotting out the stars. It wasn't here to conquer Earth. It wasn't even here for Earth. It was simply doing what it was built to do. A cosmic reaper, a collector of worlds, and humanity had stood in its path too long. The last thing Evelyn wrote, before the light came through the lab windows, was a question. If we weren't the ones the signal was meant for, then who was? And then the page went white. The hum deepened. The machine unfolded, and Earth fell silent.